Well, happening soon, a meeting between President Donald Trump and the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Canada is, after all, hosting the 51st G7 summit in the Canadian Rockies. That summit is the meeting of leaders from 7 of the world's top economic and political powers. A lot to talk about and a lot of power in that room. You're seeing President Trump right there stepping on to that Canadian soil. Top of mind for Trump and Carney is, of course, a trade agreement. But think about it this way. They're facing a ticking clock. There's a lot of high stakes. Remember, we are still in that 90-day tariff pause window, but it expires next month. Also at the top of the agenda for the 3-day summit is the potential powder keg that Holly just talked about in the Middle East, as Israel and Iran continue to volley attacks back and forth. Both sides, as Holly mentioned, show no signs of slowing up. So a lot to unpack here at the table there at the G7 summit. And to help us do that, to sort of get in their minds and see what the priority is, Max Bergmann from the Center for Strategic and International Studies joining us now. Max, where do you see America standing among those G7 nations with so many high priority topics on the table?
Well, all eyes are on us and what President Trump is going to do, what his posture towards the event will be. Is he going to be friendly with the other G7 members? Is it going to be like a sort of family gathering? Or is it going to be really tense? And I think there's a lot of questions, in part because the G7 was created to kind of deal with the major global economic issues facing the world. And right now, the major source of economic tension is the United States and the tariffs that the president has unleashed, not just on our adversaries, but on all the rest of the G7 members that are there at the summit. So that's going to be a major issue that they're going to discuss. And the hope is that this doesn't sort of really unravel into a really antagonistic event where everyone's bickering and fighting with each other.
That's right. And, you know, it was not exactly just all sunshine and roses in the Oval Office not many weeks ago between Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump has famously said Canada should be the 51st state of the United States. Mr. Carney has said Canada will never be for sale. So a lot of eyes on Carney and Trump. Do you feel like trade will be the top talking point between those two leaders at the G7?
Oh, I think so. But, you know, there's now a war developing in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, which will also be a topic, and the impact that will have on global energy prices. But I do think trade is going to be a major issue between Canada and the United States, but also between the European Union and the United States. And most of the G7 are made up of European countries and the European Union itself. And so I think there's going to be a lot of questions for the United States of, you know, how do we resolve the tariff instability that this is causing to the global economy, especially at a moment when war is erupting in the Middle East and you're going to have higher energy costs and concerns that tariffs are going to lead to an increase in prices. So this is, I think, going to be a major issue for Canada, but also for Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. And I don't think there's going to be an effort to sort of directly confront Trump in kind of a negative way, but I think there's going to be, everyone's going to be looking for clues about where he's going and how he views America's Democratic allies. Does he view them as friends and partners, or potentially as competitors and adversaries?
Max, we could talk to you for quite a while about so many things happening there at that G7, but we're going to say thank you and goodbye to you